the interior, again, back to the roadblock in any town USA. Oh, let me back up just for a second here. This is not only the surrounding counties that we're talking about here. This can be nationwide. It can be nationwide, it can be worldwide. Particularly on the social media, when you're getting your message out of, we don't want our children to have disease of the day. Okay? And this is why we're doing it. You don't want your kids to have it either. Okay? And as that gets out, people are going, yeah, it could happen here. And then, while that could happen here, then you start going, oh, by the way, here's what we, it's a suggestion you ought to consider doing if it does happen here. All right, so how do we accomplish that? Well, for the direct part, when you assemble all of this, because I think some of the lessons learned on this is you're going to see in California, the Bundy incident, and that sort of thing, is you're going to see a shutdown of communications. Now, there are a variety of ways to get your message out on social media if there's no internet, no cell phone, and so on. You may find yourself walking across the mountains with a thumb drive over the neighboring county's library, okay, and putting it out that way. So that's if you lose communication. If you lose communication internally, and you've decided, if they say, we're going to forcibly relocate a bunch of people with communicable diseases to any town in the USA, how do you get the word out that that's coming? And it may be something, the term is stigmergic, and that is simply reading the environment, signals that are in the environment, and saying, when we see these things occurring, we're all going to do the following. Even if it's nothing other than get together in Bob's garage and go, I like the way this is headed, and start your planning process. Now, the planning process, when I say to include identification of political leadership up here, I'm not talking about political leadership that's inflicting these busloads of folks on you. I'm talking about your local political leadership who can stand up and articulate the cause and be the spokesperson, okay, the representative, the real live spokesperson for the cause that's going on here. And he should have talking points. He should, for this event, and say, we're not letting this happen, we're not going to do it, here's why. And shut up. And it'd be, it's like being shot at. If I'm up, he sees me, I'm down. I'm giving time to engage you. And you need to identify the potential political leadership of these events beforehand. And it may not be the mayor. Okay. Everybody's heard the term shadow government. Or if you haven't, I suggest you look it up, because it really is a parallel government. It's established more to support the goals that aren't necessarily the goals of the folks who are actually in power. So you need to identify the political leadership who can put out your cause and your points to the media. And I'm going to say something here that's going to aggravate a lot of people who see this later on, is get a haircut and put on a tie if you're going to talk to people. Because if you saw the pictures of the militia guys down on the border, skull masks, bare arms, flipping off the cameras. Perception in some cases is reality. For all I know, that guy is the most high-speed gun in the world. He's going to save the world by himself. All right. Flipping off the camera and that sort of thing. Look like you have some political leadership. You're the guy out manning the barricades. You can keep your middle finger in conjunction with the other four, please. All right. But otherwise, it really doesn't much matter if you have a beard and mohawk. Right. Shouldn't be able to see you have a mohawk, because you ought to have a hat on. How do you move to assemble these? Let's just say you've got an alert of some sort. Movement to assemble these is not, if you've got mutual assistance agreements with the surrounding areas, it's probably not piling a convoy and drive down there. Right? That's just a big announcement, big target, that sort of thing. That is infiltrated in ones and twos to a predetermined link-up point. And that way it doesn't look like you're doing what you're doing until it's too late.
You mean like a picnic at a state park?
Yeah, it's a fine example. We're all gathered together here. All right, let's all go get in the trucks. We're not, by the way, nor did we.
Yeah.
Right into the camera. And your assembly plan, and I owe the world a link-up plan, but I'm trying to remember, there's a field manual reference. If you Google link-up plans and so on, you can go in there, and I don't go into specifics on this because to some extent it's environmentally based, it's threat-based, and we're talking to a large audience now. Okay. So you're going to have to tailor those link-up plans to your environment, what your triggers are, what your local triggers are, what your, your emergent indicators are, what your overt indicators are, and where you're going to meet, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, how you're going to communicate, whether with primary, alternate, contingency, how long were we there, and where are we going to next, and what do we expect you to do to get there. Under political leadership, your regime leadership should already be known in the local area. Who's all in favor, and it may not be the local, who's all in favor of bringing this problem to us, whatever that problem is. That you should already know. And it goes back to what Sam said. You should be just writing all this down and disseminating it. If you don't know your local leadership, you need to figure it out. There's some local leadership sitting here. There's some emerging national leadership sitting here, regional at least. You need to figure out who these guys are, okay, and who can articulate your point and who you want running this thing that all settles down. And by the way, if you are that guy, I suggest you run for local office, and we're going to hear a little more about that later, I think. Okay, a guy who's actually doing it. Now, we all discussed what's going on right here in Anytown, USA, and where you get to in about a 2-hour walk. In your exterior, in your zone, in your area of influence or interest, rather, again, you've seen a pattern here, alerting on social media and blogs, hashtag, Ebola is coming down the road, whatever you want to call it. But for these activities, and then we go back to night letters, we go back to shunning, we go back to that sort of thing, with the exception of the social media interaction, is that it needs to be coordinated and synchronized with a defined start and stop time on this whole thing for a couple of reasons. Number one is it's a discipline thing, but it also produces a psychological intimidation on this in that, holy cow, this started at 6 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday and it ended at 1800 on Thursday evening, and we haven't heard anything else. They just disappeared. Okay? Discipline is that which causes men to stand against fire. It's not fear, it's not letting none of that. And that's what we're talking about here. And suddenly you have a disciplined response, which into, when you look at some of the undisciplined responses we're seeing by various protect and serve outfits, you suddenly send a very strong message that we're coordinated, we're disciplined, and we interact together. Okay? It reinforces that perception of control, and while in this case centralization is not necessarily a bad word, it looks like somebody is controlling and directing this thing. And I will tell you that the higher you go up the chain of command to the food chain or whatever, and I expect to see Sam start nodding any second now, is they begin to focus on phantoms. Because they have so much input, it's suddenly everything, too much information, not enough intelligence. It's like, holy cow, they're everywhere. Well, not really. But it looks that way. And they begin to focus on phantoms. Now, folks who are being videotaped today may very well become those phantoms. Right, wrong, or indifferent, here we are, guys. Okay, but you're forcing them to focus on phantoms, and this really, when you hear the term leaderless resistance, this is not necessarily leaderless resistance, because you have people standing up here who are telling, who are giving you ideas for coordination, cooperation, coordination, synchronization, and that you can whether it's a blast on social media, whether it's on your radio net, whether it's face-to-face, hey, we're kicking this off at 6 o'clock on Tuesday morning, and we're going to do the following things. And at 1800 on Thursday, we're done. Okay? And it looks like, and then they start looking for people who probably really kind of don't exist, or if they do, they don't know anything. You can't prove a negative. They can waterboard you to kingdom come, you don't know it. You're going to end up making something up, and that's not real helpful either. Real good for you, but nonetheless, if you don't know it, you can't give it up. Force them to focus on anything but what you're doing.